this to Lawrence Kohlberg, who developed the theory of moral judgment. In his experiments, he was able to come or arrive at the conclusion that moral reasoning basically varies based on age and values. Because someone who is a child may just be addicted to rules and regulations without considering the ideal situation to be able to save, for instance, a life. If our idea of moral reasoning is not properly integrated into the main focus of creating a viable future, then our standard of reasoning might as well be not something that is going to help to create a positive change in society. So basically, moral reasoning, when we say reasoning, what does reasoning mean? Or moral reasoning. Sometimes people think about moral reasoning as, religious codes, but no, moral reasoning is a social theoretical concept. It is a social construct, which is basically bringing to bear how we need or we should think properly based on logicality and sensibility. If we have to judge a situation, we have to think about, is it something that is going to be helpful to society or to the individuals concerned? In other words, the standard we have to use in evaluating that situation should be about creating a positive change in society. And of course, sustainability, we know that what is sustainable implies those things that we do that gives us pleasure, that sustains our life, that gives us, a better way of feeling. At the same time, those things should not interfere with the welfare and happiness of even people yet to be born. Those things should not interfere with the happiness and welfare of future generations. So if we are doing something, we should first be able to evaluate, we should figure out, is it something sustainable? Sometimes people tend to think about sustainability as something that is lasting. Or I have a sustainable relationship with this girl. Or I have a sustainable relationship with this boy. But, that is practically not the connotative or even the denotative definition of sustainability. It means something else. And therefore, today we have to examine, first of all, we have to examine the endogenous and exogenous factors that are affecting our moral reasoning. Moral reasoning basically implies thinking in a logical and a sensible way for the welfare of those concerned. In other words, moral reasoning has to do with standards. So, for instance, if you have a family or you have an organization, you have an institution, when you talk about moral values in that setting, it means the standard that the organization has to pursue to be able to create a viable future. And therefore, even in our families, there is the element of the expectation of moral reasoning. For instance, no woman is going to expect her spouse to go and have some extramarital sex. And no man is going to be anticipating that, okay, my woman, it's not a problem. She should have fun with other guys. So, moral reasoning is all pervasive. Although the academics, they tend to claim or they tend to think that, moral reasoning is something that is, generated by Professor Kohlberg, and so, he is the guy, he is the theorist who generated this theory. But moral reasoning is something inherent in all spheres of existence. Even children have moral reasoning. They think logically and sensibly based on how to create a cohesion among themselves and to be able to foster a sustainable, reliable future. And so let's take a look at, for instance, we have a number of us, I will not generalize them, but a number of us have good intentions. going to have that type of thinking that is going to be able to create a positive change in our lives. But most often than not, we'll find that we get thwarted, or we become disabled, we become deactivated in our line of logicality and sensibility in creating a thinking pattern that is going to enhance a sustainable future. So what are the causes, for instance, of, or what are the factors responsible for this type of unwanted or undesirable situations? So basically we have two categories. We have the endogenous factors and we also have the exogenous factors, or the intrinsic factors and the extrinsic factors. I'll give you an example. Suppose I just want to live my life in a way that I don't want to run into problems, into any moral or immoral problems. And then I find myself get engaged in immoral activities. Why? Now, according to classical teachings, for instance, one of these teachings in the classical literature is called Bhagavad Gita. And according to some of these classical teachings, it is mentioned that when we contemplate on the object of the sensory modalities, we will develop some attachment for that object. So our thinking pattern, we have to be careful about what we are contemplating on. Because whether we like it or not, it's going to create an impression on our minds, and we may become attached to that subject matter, or to that theme, or to that object. So it's not a question of, I don't want to do it. The point is, were you thinking about it? If you were thinking about it, you create an impression on the mind. And therefore, what we think about now could help to create our actions, could help to enhance our choices, could help to enhance our decisions, and could help in the long run to facilitate our growth or our underdevelopment. And therefore, it is important for us to figure out or to be aware about our objects of thoughts. If a thought comes into our mind and we dwell on it, we begin to make it like, it's like, you after taking a shower, and then you're washing yourself in the mirror, you're dressing up, and then, you make your hair this way, you make your hair this way. And that would take some time. That's just momentum. You want to use it for something, and because you're going out from it, you're going out with that type of dress or that fashion. So you don't really dwell on it for so much. But if a thought comes into our mind and we dwell on it, what follows next is that we develop attachment for that object. Like someone was sharing with me. She's married. And she's developed some affection for one guy. And this has developed into a situation whereby some strong attachment is there. So she was sharing with me what to do. And know that I don't like this, and my family who don't like this, what to do? I said, now you have to unwind. And just like you develop that pattern, you have to really unwind your thought. It's like you have a video and a video machine. You have to rewind if you want to go back to the beginning. Because if you move forward, you're actually advancing. So, our thoughts could actually create our future. And therefore, what we are thinking about matters a lot in helping us to be able to create a particular life pattern. Therefore, thinking, feeling, and willing, they are important aspects of our life. So, we see these are some of those endogenous factors. Thinking, our thought provocations. Why is it endogenous? Because it is something within. Endogenous means something that affects us, that is within us. It's not something that you find a person and say, hey, get up from here. No, it is you're living. I mean, it's right in you. It's like an enemy who is closest to you, who lives in you. And to deal with that type of enemy could be very difficult. So moral reasoning, yeah, it is something that is going to be that will be very creative in maintaining social stability in society, even political stability, even domestic stability. Moral reasoning is very important. Why is that? How is that important? Because the way we think matters much, in as much as our thinking pattern creates our future. And so, we have to be careful about what we think. Another endogenous factor that affects moral reasoning is what, again, in Vedic science, we call it the three modes of material nature. There are three modes: the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of ignorance. These qualitative modes affect our thinking patterns. Therefore, they affect our moral values. They affect our moral reasoning. If someone is in a mode of goodness, his or her thinking pattern will be something that, is about the welfare of all that are involved. If someone is in a mode of passion, his welfare, her thinking or his thinking is to extract some enjoyment from whatever objects they see or whatever objects that crosses their way. I'll give you an example. In the US, there is a very rapid development in rape, with teachers raping their students. That has been there for a long time. Men raping girls, but the current trend now is almost every fortnight a female teacher is thrown into jail for raping their students. I remember one case. This lady, she was the wife to the vice, to the principal of the high school. So there was a 17-year-old boy in our class. And, youthful people, 16, 17, 15, they're very, very attractive. They can zap you. So if you don't have that inner strength, you may not be able to resist. And you may know that this is not good, but you may not be able to resist. So this lady, she was making some arrangement to take this boy out, this 17-year-old boy out for fun. And then she realized, wait a minute. She sent a text message to her and said, hey, you are 17, you are underage. And besides that, I am a teacher. If I get involved in this and I'm caught, I'll go to jail. So traditionally we expect that. Oh, she has realized she's not going to do it. But no, she went ahead. Even after sending a text message to the boy, revealing the consequence and warning him, even warning herself, but still, she went ahead to take this boy out, had fun with him, and she was caught by the cops. She lost her job, she lost her husband, and she went to jail. So what is it that forces people to get into immoral activities like this? This is a case where she knows it's wrong, she's already warned herself, warned the boy, but again, she was victimized by the third party. So, she's being controlled by the mode of passion. And this mode of passion can force us to do things sometimes that we ordinarily wouldn't want to do. And the mode of passion works in combination with lust, L-U-S-T. In Sanskrit terminology, that lust is called Kama, K-A-M-A. And what happens is that we may not be desirous, we may be very distinctive about not doing a particular thing. But if we don't have the inner strength to resist that temptation, we may become victims of side things. And therefore, moral reasoning is affected negatively by the mode of passion, and also lust. And this lust, according to classical literature, this lust has its repository in the mind, in the sensory modalities. And therefore we can say it is something that we see and when we have to fight it or we have to wave it. No, it's living right there. So it becomes very difficult to deal with all this type of stuff. Therefore, we find out the loss factor, the most of nature, especially the mode of passion, affects us in a negative way in terms of our moral reasoning, the moral values. If we know the standard is this is the mark, still we are forced to do the wrong thing. And this has gone. This could actually set us on a pedestal of depression. Imagine when someone gets thrown into jail, when he or she never anticipated, and then they regret, and then sometimes you go to the court, and then you tell the justice that I am guilty with reason. I was forced to do this. Sometimes people say, I was forced by the devil. So the judge says, okay, we'll send it to jail. The devil will force you out of jail too. So, these are things we need to be introspective about. These are also areas that we need to investigate. As young people growing up, who knows? In the future, you may be the president of this country. And how many presidents, how many international leaders have lost even their jobs because of lack of sufficient moral reasoning? Because if there is sufficient moral reasoning, you'll be grounded in resistance to temptations. Because then your contemplation will be morally oriented, and therefore you have that inner strength. That in as much as we don't seem to have proper understanding of this, and we need to be able to develop a particular or this type of reasoning pattern, we may allow several things to come into our mind to pierce through our comfort zone, and they could be our source of destruction. We find the case where even President Clinton in the US, he almost lost his job. What about Strauss-Kahn, the former IMF director? What about the political leader of Italy? There's so many people. And therefore, if we don't really understand the essence or the need for us to be morally reasonable, it is time to be aware of that now. Because this is going to be the standard that we expect. This is the standard that we expect the global leaders to follow. So if you're going to be a leader, there is a need to be morally astute, and to be a moral reasoner is a matter of practice. Just like you read chemistry textbooks, you know the different equations. You read mathematical textbooks, you know the different theories. You read whatever, physics. What you know, if you read calculus, you know the theories involved and the processes. So being a moral reasonable person helps us a lot to save us from so much of social calamities. Now, if we talk about the exogenous factors, we see the society, we have so much of billboards being displayed. And most of the billboards that are used for, sales promotion, advertorials, subliminal advertorials. Because I say subliminal because, some of the things you think that they're not really affecting you. But you watch these advertorials either on the billboards or on the TV, on the screen. These things have a power to change your thoughts. I tell you, if if they begin to advertise something even unhealthy, for instance, if they start advertising dry stool, and they give different type of reasons why you need it, and you keep watching it, at some point in time, you begin to think, let me try it. That is the power of subliminal advertising. Therefore, all the big bulbs we see, they are meant to change our thinking pattern from that of moral reasoning to something else. And if we are not aware of that, if we are not aware of the power of subliminal advertising, we should better know it now. Now, in the U.S. Army, if a soldier is not inclined towards killing, what the officers do is to put him or her, subject that soldier to, expose that soldier to a video or a movie that is purely violent and killing oriented. And after some time, the soldier becomes desensitized to killing. This is the power of advertorials, or the power of the movies, the screens, what we see on the billboards, or what we see on the screens. And therefore, I remember some years ago I met one professor, one young lady in New York, who I went for a women's conference. And then after my presentation, so she came to me and then we were discussing. So she became, after knowing my background, she became very much interested in me and she was telling me so much story. And one of the things she was telling me about her family, she has 2 kids. Her husband is not a professor, her husband is a businessman. But then, she said, in her family, no one watches TV. I said, what? A white lady, a Caucasian. I said, what? And, we hear of this thing from those who are coming from Oriental background. And this is a typical New Yorker. So I said, please you tell me a reason. So she explained that she's a psychologist and she knows the implications of children or even grown-ups watching movies, especially violent movies and pornographic movies. And she explained that if you watch a pornographic movie, if you are not sexually stimulated before you watch a movie, in a short while, you'll be looking for sex. This is the authority of those who are concerned. And so we find that our exposure, or what we watch, in short, subliminal advertising affects our moral reasoning. It's up to us now to see whether we go into some limitation or delimitation. The ball is in our course. Another exogenous factor or extrinsic factor that affects our moral reasoning is association, the type of association we keep. If you keep an association whereby you're being bombarded to do the improper thing on daily basis, like you have, young people, young students, they have all this heavy peer pressure in schools. And one of my friend's daughter was telling me, her school, there's so much of, drugs, young people, high school. She said there's so much, so she said she's feeling very uncomfortable in her school. Because there are so many young boys and girls who are doing drugs. Now there are some people that they never were exposed to drugs, but when they came to that school, their friends like pressurizing. They give them all of the the good things about taking drugs. How are you going to feel high and all this? But we know how people's mental health and physical health become affected when they get into this type of hard drugs. You get weaned, you get aged down, you get all type of broken down system, and very soon you become less important in your own values and in your own life. So the association we keep could affect our moral reasoning, either negatively or positively. It's like when you put an iron nail into fire. One of these classical teachers, A.C. Bhaktivedanta, will give this type of example. He said, when you put an iron nail into fire, the nail gradually will acquire the qualities of fire. And at some point in time, the iron nail becomes red hot and could burn. And so, association matters. If we want to be people who will help us, who will help others in elevating or promoting their moral reasoning for a sustainable future, then we should think about what type or what quality of people that we need to be hanging out with. It's like in science, there is this principle of osmotic pressure, where you have two solutions separated by a membrane, and then you find that the solution which has, higher concentration will draw the other one with a lower concentration. So science also shows that whenever there is, a coming together, whenever there is association, there is always that subtle interaction that goes on to affect people's mindsets and consciousness. So again, if we want to be morally reasonable, to be able to create a moral thinking pattern for a viable future, for sustainability, then again it boils to anchor. We should think about this. And especially if we do understand our pristine identity. If we understand who we are we just these physical bodies? Because these bodies are made of sensory modalities and emotions. But beyond the sensory modalities and emotion, we also have an anti-material substance, the jiva. If you again investigate classical teachings, you will find, you get to understand who your real identity is. Then if you do know that, when you get tempted with all of this immoral reasoning, immoral thinking, you'll be able to say, hey, get out from my memory, get out from my consciousness. The thought will come. Whether you settle on that thought, it's another thing. But if the thought comes and you let it go out peacefully, you don't have a problem. It is when you start adoring the thought, and you make it like, your companion, you want to hang out with the thought, you're looking for trouble. But in most cases, we don't have the power to say no to negative thoughts. And therefore, we need to raise our consciousness. So in a nutshell, for youths to become fully developed and become useful to themselves, to their communities, and to the nation, we need to develop moral values. And moral values come with moral reasoning or moral thinking that is oriented in logicality and sensibility. And we can only have that type of strong value when we elevate our consciousness by some definitive approach based on therapeutic interventions. And one of those very therapeutic interventions that I have used over the years, I have self-administered myself over the years, which has transformed me over the years, is this sonic therapy, which A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami established or came to the West, especially New York, to establish his institution, which is being still sustained in terms of spreading that therapy and teachings. And so we want you to really, as young people, be versatile, be broad-minded, figure things out yourself, so that you don't become a victim of circumstance. Is there any comments or questions on this,
please? So the problem if we have this thought, but it's more that we just have to, thoughts will always come, doing moral thinking,
Sure.
not moral. But it's the question if we are going to react to that or not. So this is
what happens is that there are two things. We have a responsibility. And responsibility comes from two words: response and ability. In other words, we have the ability to respond to any situation. Now, what happens is that if we respond proactively, we don't have a problem. If we respond reactively, we will have a problem. So yes, when the thought comes, we should be proactive. We should proactively respond to that thought. We should have a high philosophical sense of belonging to be able to evaluate that thought and weigh it on the scale of moral values. Is it morally or is it ethically right for me to do this? If it is ethically right, then you can process it. You can dwell on it. Otherwise, if you evaluate that and if your answer is no, this is morally incorrect for me to deal with, so you let it go. Again, it's a mindset. It's a shifting pattern of the mindset. So we see, our mental psyche could be used in so many amazing ways. We have the faculty to be able to develop in such a way that, look at airplanes flying in the air. This is man's brain. But yeah, but you see, as young people, if you have 3 PhDs, if you become the president of this country, and you don't have moral reasoning, you could run into trouble. You may lose a job. You may even go to jail. And I gave you examples of people who have done. I know of justices who have gone to jail. I know of big political notchers who have gone to jail because of living lifestyle devoid of moral reasoning. So yeah, the thought comes. We should process it. We should evaluate it proactively, not reactively. Because sometimes if we evaluate a thought reactively, we may just be passionate about it. And it's not going to really be very helpful to us. So yes, we should be proactive. And when we are proactively evaluating a thought, that helps us to be able to figure out, this is not for me. Let me let it go. Yes.
Can I ask, you said that if there is attachment to a person or thing, that attachment can influence on the other person or the thing, if I understand you correctly. So we have to undo the attachment. How can we do that?
It's a mental shift. It's a mental shift. You unwind. You see, it's just like, okay, if you see someone, and like I was telling the story of that lady. So what I mentioned to her is, okay, you becoming attracted to somebody, it's just you are married, you become attracted to somebody, and so I said, you unwind. So she asked us a similar question. She said, how? I said, just like you begin to dwell on that person's thought, you begin to dwell on that person's thought, on that person's values. Sometimes unwinding could be, sometimes people look at it like a destructive thought pattern. But no, you're trying to save yourself. I give an example. Another example. A girl was attached to her friend. To the point that, she said, can we start a relationship? And then the boy said, no. And she was devastated. Now, when she spoke with me, and she was really like in a traumatic state. When she spoke with me, I said, but this is a simple thing. Now, I'll teach you some technology to unwind. But you may think this is immoral or unreligious or whatever. But we're not talking about religiosity now. We're talking about how to save you. So I said, now look at that boy. You've been friends all this while. You're classmates. You're close to each other. I said, look at that boy and look at the bad qualities he has. Now dwell on those bad qualities. You'll be detested. You have a distastefulness for that boy immediately. So she just burst out laughing. She experimented in a few days. She said, oh, she's no longer attached to him.
What about the attachments to the other types of thought? For example, bad, to be afraid that something happened. Is it the same way of doing?
No. These are talking about the object. Now, if you're afraid something is going to happen, what you do, or I'll give you another example. I was in Swiss, I was in Zurich, and there was a family that has some counseling session with me. I'm also engaged in some domestic counseling and all this stuff. So there was a family that had a session with me, and then the parents, they said, their 7-year-old boy is a nut. In fact, the mother said, she just at the verge of blowing out. Blowing out on this boy. I said, it's a simple thing. Now, instead of being so much angered by his behavior, why don't we do something? Now, let's change. Instead of showing, because each time they tell the boy something, the parents have their plan, and the 7-year-old boy openly will tell them, no, this is my plan. So the guy, especially the mother, was becoming completely exasperated. So I said, now, bring this boy, let's work together, let's be friendly, let me be friendly, you be there, and then we see how the session goes. So we had a session with him, we had a picture together. The sister and then the other of his siblings were together. He was sitting just by me. Parents were sitting there. And so I was having some sweet, interactions with him. And then later, he told his mom that this is my friend. Tomorrow, I want to go see him at the monastery. So the mom called me on the phone the next day and mentioned that to me. So I said, all right, let's go. And then when they came, he was so much, excited about our meeting. And so I asked him one thing. I said, so, you're my friend now, and I love you very much. So, can you help me to do one thing? He said, tell me. I said, there's one thing I want you to do. Just, whatever mommy tells you, just do it, and I'll be happy with you.
Is it work?
It worked perfectly well. So the parents, they were super amazed. Now, when someone or a situation arises, even for instance fear, we have to seek out ways of dealing with that. Because that situation can cause us some trauma. But how do? We should have someone in our lives that we should be able to share our challenges with. We should be able to share our happy moments with. And that was the situation with that family. So when they told me that, I just became friendly with the boy, and then he developed so much of attachment for me. The attachment was changed now from his, bad, negative thoughts of just agitating his parents. He transferred his attachment to me. Then we were able to influence him. So we may become agitated or disturbed by thoughts of fear. We should share those challenges we have in our life with someone that we trust. And just by sharing, you have a lot of the trauma, almost half of the trauma, disintegrated. I mean, it's like you have a sheet of paper and your friend says, please, I need some paper to write an address down. And you divide the paper into two and you give to your friend. You no longer have a full sheet of paper. You have half. That is what thoughts also do. When we share our thoughts, especially when thoughts are haunting us, and we share our negative situation, our challenges with someone, keep in mind, do not share your confidential issues with someone who will perceive trusted person who may take you to the streets. You share with someone you trust. That person should be, in most cases, perhaps a superior. Someone who is more experienced in social values or whatever values, who will be in a position to be able to help. And sometimes even peers who are well trusted, based on their experiences, they could help us. So, again, one of these classical professors, Rupa Goswami, he recommended that we should have confidence. Somebody, it might not necessarily be your husband or your spouse. There's somebody in your life. I know the case of one medical doctor. She's a medical doctor, the husband is a professor. And because they work intensely, so they don't really have time to be together most of the time. So I'll be the one that she will be speaking with all the time, the challenges she will have in the office and other things. And then in that way, she says, I got it, so she's also the principal. So just by sharing, you get relief. So we should have someone in our lives that we should be able to share our challenges. Any other comments or questions? Yes, please.
Can you please elaborate more on connection between moral values and sustainable development?
Yeah. Sustainability, like I mentioned, sustainable development means, or sustainability means, those things we do to create a viable future which will not interfere with the happiness of future generations. Now, if we are doing something that is based on moral values, then basically that is not going to affect anyone's it's not going to negatively impact on anyone's happiness. Now, if we are doing something that is just based to give us immediate satiation, I'll give you an example. The teacher who was just about to satiate her sexual impulse. So, she didn't care. But suppose she had moral values, she wouldn't become involved in that, and then she will be able to create a viable future for herself. In other words, she'll be able to have a life or continue with your teaching, and by that, it will create a positive change in the life of students that she might be teaching. Now, her going to jail has negatively impacted on sustainability because her resourcefulness is like boxed in. You understand the point now? So, if we are morally astute, then basically it helps to coordinate the affairs of other people, to be able to give them a better sense of belonging, to be able to give them a better way to think about their lives, and a better way to be able to become productive or to contribute to the welfare of society. If we are immoral reasoners, we will do anything just to satisfy or to satiate ourselves without thinking about the other person's future. So this is how the thinking pattern affects the future. Like I mentioned, when we're contemplating a particular sensory object, we may develop an attachment for it. And if it is not a good attachment, it will be very destructive. So if it is of moral, reasonable dispensation, then we'll find that that is going to help not only you, but it's going to help other individuals also to be able to create a viable future, a sustainable future. They will be happy in their future life, and everyone else will be happy. Does it make some sense? Yes.
So when we are young, not only that we have to, let's say, engage in the career experience to be sustainable, getting our technology, like technical things, but we should also work on ourselves, because with all this knowledge we cannot make a real change if we don't have the right character, right?
Character development is a prerequisite factor in creating a sustainable future. And with our character development, we may be very experts. Yeah, I know a number of my colleagues, some professors and PhD holders, that they got involved in immoral activities, or in other words, activities that is not set as a standard, that's against the standard of the institutions. And it's not that they deliberately did it. The impulse or the thought comes and they didn't process it, and then they jump onto it, and they get fired. So yeah, moral development is important in as much as the future lies on how our character is developing simultaneously. If we have developed character, we can be socially secure, and our future will be rest assured. But it's so difficult to have proper character development if we don't embark on some therapeutic intervention, some definitive therapeutic intervention. Can I do what?
Can you explain this last thing?
Yeah, therapeutic intervention. By that I mean, for instance, say sonic therapeutic intervention. Now, in 1990, there were about 1990 or so, there were some professors, social science professors, who conducted an experiment on sonic therapy in Washington, D.C. And they came up with a conclusion. Before they started the experiment, they checked the crime diary of Washington, D.C. So they had that record. And they got all these, what do you call it? Excuse me. They got all these spiritualists. They got all the spiritualists to come, and they were reciting some type of anti-material sound vibrations. When I say sonic, means it's a derivate, it's an adjective derived from the word sound. So sonic therapeutic intervention simply means sonic therapy, a therapy that helps you to be able to get a spiritual revolution of the impurities that are causing you to become involved in negative thought patterns and getting you into trouble. So when this experiment was conducted, they found that during the period that these therapists, these sonic therapists, were reciting their transcendental sound vibrations, during that period, the crime rate in Washington, D.C. sagged heavily. And that was not even in the whole of Washington. They were in a particular location. It's just that the people were many who were embarking on this project. And so, what basically implies is that sonic therapy or transcendental sound vibration minimizes or mitigates crime. If you go into the general theory of crime, those of you who will be studying or who are studying criminology, in the general theory of crime, two professors generated the general theory of crime, and that general theory of crime, the major emphasis there is that all crimes and antisocial behavior are rooted in low self-control. So we find that, this sound vibration saves life. Just like, gross example, if you're driving on the road and someone is crossing, if you just write on perhaps on a building or in front of your windscreen, hey, leave the road so that you don't get killed. They don't hear. The person will not hear. But if you hum, boom, 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 immediately he will jump. Sound, in that gross sense, saves a life. So what? Not to speak of transcendental sound. And I see that even in my own life. Okay? In my own life, I've been practicing self-administered sonic therapy for over 30 years. So if you were not born at that time. And what I found is that it has helped me a lot in my academic development. It has helped me a lot in my character development. It has helped me a lot in my social interactions. And to the point that I deal with people, I deal with girls and boys. I mean, I relate with them like they're biological kids. And so sometimes that has a negative advantage because you go to some places and people know, this is your values, and then they start pushing you all over the place. Hey, I want to be a student. Yeah, but this is the practical aspect of it. And what do we do? Like in my system, there's a therapy that we use, and I self-administer this therapy on myself every day. The word is just a therapy that is containing 16 words with 32 syllables. And I have that's a whole lot of spiritual revolution. And I begin to see things clearly. And in most cases, when I meet my friends, professors, then they ask me, hey, Vasily, why are you so happy? I tell them, well, I'm a sonic therapist, and I'm also administering the same on myself every day. So that makes a lot of difference. And that therapy is what basically has helped to create that sustainable change in my own life.
When can we read more about sonic therapy?
Basically, I have published some work on sonic therapy as an antidote to rape. That was like several years ago, over 15 years ago. Except I had to take out that journal. So what I'm talking, I've established myself as an authority in the academy in that area. So I have published in that area. Basically, I've also seen that a number of other people have conducted some experiments. I know one guy who conducted his PhD dissertation on sonic therapy. That basically he uses the Hare Krishna Mantra as an antidote to anxiety, stress, and depression. So if you Google, even on the web, Hare Krishna Mantra, the effect of the Hare Krishna Mantra on anxiety, stress, and depression, you'll get a PhD thesis established. That you readily get, because my publications, I'm not really uploaded my old publications on my website. And just in case, those of you, if you feel, some people traditionally, naturally, they feel shy to ask questions in the public. If you are one of those who feel shy to ask questions in the public, you could, this guy also, you can catch him up on the internet. You Google this guy, no? You can catch up with me. In fact, the name you find on the internet is Bhakti Vasudeva Swami. Yeah, you want to ask some questions?
That tomorrow you will have a program exactly on that sonic therapy. Tomorrow evening, isn't it?
Yeah.
So maybe somebody who wants to know more can come.
All right.
We will invite them.
Yeah.
In the beginning of your lecture, you were talking about inherited moral values. Inherited moral values.
Okay.
But also there very good speech about sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
I have a comment about sustainability and human nature. In general, I think that also humans are hardwired genetically to look for the short-term solution or to look at the problem right now. For example, texting and writing. You create the pros and cons. What can you get if you text? You can get the text answered, then cons are you can kill yourself, somebody else, or damage your company. And in the long run, it's really hard to think in the long run. And moreover, to think sustainably. Can you comment more about that? How can we reprogram our brain?
Yeah, that's a nice point. Now, if someone is driving and texting, you may say, well, I'm in a hurry, and I just have to get this done. Yeah, but then again, the principle of sustainability here should be reflected. Is it something that is going to satiate your immediate need? Maybe. Maybe not. It may end up your life, like you mentioned. You may have an accident. So we have to look. In some states, I know in some states in the US, you don't text, you don't answer a call when you're driving. It's against the law. It's a criminal. That means a road traffic addict, you get arrested. Because experiments, research has shown that people who text and drive, they constitute part of the accident, data in road traffic accidents. And so, yeah, the gadgets are there, the modern information technology is there. And again, everything has its, pros and cons. If we are texting has its cons. It has its pros. It may be something that you want to get yourself relief or get something done immediately. But if we look at the cons, they may overweigh the pros. And therefore, we should think about what we are doing. Is it something that is going to give us a lasting happiness? Is it something that is going to create a viable future for others, or for all those concerned, for all those road users, even the pedestrians? We have seen people, this is a nice point you made. I was in a car. Someone was driving. And someone just called him by the corner. Hello! And he turned. Few seconds. Boom! He hit someone in the front. My friend was driving. An elderly, retired, nuclear chemistry professor. He's over 70. He was driving. His son called him. The son is a lawyer in the US. His son called him. Son is a lawyer. He picked the call.